Shahrir. Shah.
Uh,
Oh. I can. Can we edit it out? Because I completely messed up that name.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Devlog Game Development Podcast, the only one here on YouTube. And this time I have a very special guest. Not only he's a game developer, but he's also a fellow YouTuber, and you probably recognize him. He's Jonas, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Just tell you a few words about him. So there you go, man.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for having me. I've started my indie game development journey about 2 years ago. I've been making games for 10 years, but 2 years ago, it's when I decided I want to go full time into game development, indie game development. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. And since then, I've made an indie game called Islanders with a team called Grizzly Games. We started that game at Game School, and luckily, it turned out to be quite successful, which was, for me personally, was quite a surprise. I didn't expect my first game on Steam to do that well, but luckily it did. And now I'm working on my next game called Will You Snail, which will also come out on Steam, and which is a solo project.
So, like, did you? How old are you, by the way?
I'm 24.
24. Like, man, you look like at least 5 years younger. So I was like, man, he's still like, he's just in his 20 years, But yeah, I mean, that's really cool. So did you finish college?
No, actually, I didn't finish my studies.
You dropped out like me?
Yeah, I dropped out. Yeah, I actually liked my studies quite a lot. I studied at HDW Berlin, Bachelor Game Design, and they do a great job teaching you about game design. They created an awesome work environment for us to create Islanders. But in the end, I decided that I wanted to just dive right into indie development, and at the time I didn't really care about that piece of paper I get at the end. So
yeah, that's really cool. Like to hear that there are actually programs. I mean, I say this all the time. I don't want to be that guy who's like, I don't want to people think of me the guy who tells everybody leave college. But like in most colleges, the education program is not that good. It doesn't teach you a lot. You go to 4 years, and at the end you don't know anything basically. So it's really nice to hear that there is actually, you're the first guest who actually attended in a game development school, so game design school, and they are rare. I don't know in your city, in your country.
I mean, there are quite a couple, but I think finding a good one is definitely difficult and rare. Yeah, because there are a lot of game schools that don't really let you make all of games by yourself, on your own. And that was really the great thing about my game design.
When you enroll inside my Ultimate Game Development Academy, you will get access to all courses that you see on this list. And currently there are 55 courses, and every month I add new courses that will teach you how to create games using Unity or Unreal Engine, and courses that will teach you how to create game assets using Blender and Illustrator. And navigating in my academy is very simple. Simply click on the course that you want to learn. So for example, if you want to learn how to create a MOBA game, click on that course, and here are the videos. And simply click on the video and watch it. That's all there is to it. Below every video, you have a comment section where you can ask questions when something is not clear, and I will help you understand any concept that you don't understand. So if you want to learn how to create games using Unity or Unreal Engine, or if you want to learn how to create game assets using Blender and Illustrator, or how to learn all of that, click the first link in the description below this video and enroll in my Ultimate Game Development Academy.
Studies at HDW Berlin is that they just have a lot of very practical projects where basically the entire semester is just you making a game with 2 or 3 other students, and they basically support you with that process.
That's the main thing. Like, you can know the theory however you, as much as you can. You can know to program as much as you can, but if you don't dive in, and this is what I tell people all the time, dive in. That's the key to learning. Like, that is the key for you to learn. So let's get to that. Actually, how did you learn to create games? Because I see on your channel you tried quite a lot of game engines. Like Islanders, is it created in Unity?
Mm-hmm.
And yes. Now your game Will You Snail's you're creating it in GameMaker.
Mm-hmm.
So you tried quite a lot. How did you actually learn? On your own, or how did you start?
I mean, the two game engines you just mentioned are pretty much the only two I know. So I started out with Game Maker when I started getting into game development. My dad introduced me into Game Maker because I liked making little paper games and just liked playing video games as well, and wanted to make games on my own. So somehow my dad found Game Maker, and over the course of a couple of years, I just fell in love with that. I used it for roughly 10 years, and then once I started studying game design in Berlin is when I started learning Unity. Unity is pretty great as well, and now I just have two game engines, both with their advantages and disadvantages, of course. Game Maker, for example, is really awesome if you want to prototype stuff quickly, if you want to make 2D games quickly for game jams. Game Maker is just really nice because it's just a little bit faster still than Unity, and of course it's more optimized for making 2D games. Sometimes making 2D games can feel a little bit awkward with Unity, and that process is of course more streamlined in Game Maker. And then Unity, on the other hand, has a lot of advantages as well, where it's a lot easier to keep your project clean. It is a lot easier to port to different platforms. Overall, their business model is just really, really nice and friendly, where you basically don't have to pay anything until you start making some money. So I like both engines for different reasons.
So you said you went indie, so you did not work in a company before, you didn't try to apply to any jobs, you just went indie right away?
I did an internship in an indie, or in a medium-sized games company called Mimimi Productions, Mimimi Games. They made Shadow Tactics, for example. And that's about when I realized that I don't want to work in a bigger games company, or even in a semi-big company.
Yeah.
Actually, they're very nice. They're very talented people at Mimi Productions. Greetings, in case anybody's watching. But I just figured out that wasn't for me, which is why I quit both the the internship as well as my studies pretty much at the same time. That was the trigger for that, more or less. Yeah.
It can be a little overwhelming to work in a game scene. I'm not like saying this to like give anybody an idea that he should not work, but like you're working on a game that, you know, you've given a task and you're working on that task. You cannot like implement something if you have in your head, which is, you know, what most game developers do. So you went pretty much indie, and I saw like a couple of your videos about your game Islanders, and as you said, it was a quite it was a quite a success. Like one video that where I watched, you said it got over 200k downloads or sales on Steam. Is that number higher now?
Yeah, that is probably higher by now. Yeah.
So like walk us through, like how many of you created that game? How did you get the idea, which is, you know, what I also want to know, because a lot of people have issues with like just coming up with a game idea they can create. And then we can progress on like how you worked or collaborated as a team on the game to preserve the code, to not break anything and stuff like that.
Yeah. First of all, perhaps I should mention that I have quite detailed making of videos on my channel where I talk about marketing and all of that stuff. But I
will link everybody.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can totally give you a quick breakdown here as well. So we started the project Islanders at Game School, and what we did at the beginning of the project was 2 weeks of prototyping. As I've said, we were a team of 3 people. It was so two of my friends, Friedemann, Paul, and me. And at the beginning of the project, we just did 2 weeks of prototyping. 1 week where we just threw completely different stuff at the wall, just tried a bunch of really varied and different stuff. For example, we had a rafting prototype that almost that we almost turned into a full game. And then at the end of that first week, we just pick our favorites, because oftentimes it's a lot easier to find quality in quantity than to just come up with the perfect game idea right out of the gate. So if you try more things, then the likelihood that some of those game ideas are good is a lot higher. Then at the end of the first week, we picked the 2 best ones, which was the rafting prototype and a city builder. And in the second week of prototyping, we took those prototypes, iterated on them, tried a bunch more things with them. And that's eventually when we figured out that for the time window we had, which was about 4 months, we wanted to finish the game within 4 months. The rafting prototype didn't make as much sense because there were just a couple of technical difficulties that we didn't know how to overcome, like how do we make those crazy water currents that you have in rivers, how do we make that look good? We couldn't figure that out. And also we liked the idea of islanders. We found a couple of cool iterations of the system in the second week, which is why we eventually decided for the city builder idea. And then over the course of the development, we found more and more ways to simplify it, to break it down, make it even simpler, and just turn it into a very nice and small game that we can finish within 4 months. One thing that we were looking for right from the beginning, even in the prototyping, was how can we make something that is appealing? We wanted to make something where when people see it, when people see a screenshot, or when people hear about the game idea, it's something they want to play. And that's also, I guess, both the rafting prototype. Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
you can talk about it. Yeah, I will just share for you people.
And here you can see the finished result. It's just something. If you see that, it looks captivating. It looks interesting. It looks like something you want to play. And we tried not to take any risks there, which is why we even made some visual prototypes at the beginning of the development process, where we tried out, can we make this look good? So at the very beginning, before we even started coding any game logic, we had a prototype that looked relatively similar to what you see here in the final game, that you couldn't play, but you could turn the camera. And that gave us some confidence that we had a game idea that we could turn into something that looks nice and appealing.
So, like, the game is about building cities on islands, and like, what is like the end goal? What is something that will, make you lose the game? What is that mechanism?
Oh yeah, maybe I should explain that. The game is a high score city builder, and so it's a city builder with the twist that there's no resource management. It's an extremely simplified city builder, where you just have an inventory of buildings at the bottom of your screen. Every time you place a building, you get points for how well you placed it. So it's not even real time. Every time you place a building is when you get points, and only if you reach enough points, then you get more buildings into your inventory, and the game continues. Once you run out of buildings because you didn't reach the point threshold, then it's game over. And the way you get points when placing a building is you just get points depending on what's in the radius of the building you place. So for example, if I place a lumberjack, then I get 1 point for each tree within the radius of that lumberjack. But I get -5 points or something like that for every other lumberjack within that radius. And that is a very simple mechanic that we use to basically design all of the buildings in the game. So there are about 20-30 buildings in the game, and they all just work with that simple radius mechanic, where every building has a radius and it has certain things it gets bonus points for, and has certain buildings and structures where it gets minus points for. And that is so a very simple mechanic that makes for very complex gameplay. Yeah,
this is exactly what I want to say. A very simple mechanics, and it looks simple and looks eye-peeling, as you said. Like just these the small details that you did, as you mentioned in the beginning, like creating a game that you would want to play when you see it. Like just those small details, like those points popping up, going at the corner. It's really cool. It's these details that actually make the game more awesome, much better than it is without those details. So like moving forward, how did you guys, like how many of you in your team, like it was 3 of you, but how many of you guys are programmers? How many who designed the 3D models and stuff like that? And how did you collaborate in the project, like coding with another person and preserving the code, like you not breaking anything, he not breaking anything? How did you sync that?
I think one of the reasons why our team worked so well together is because everybody in our team sort of knows how to do everything. So of course, everybody is specialized on a certain subject. For example, I'm specialized, or I was specialized on gameplay, coding, and on balancing game system design. So coming up with all of the buildings, all of the building interactions, and coding a lot of the gameplay logic. But the cool thing is Friedemann, our artist, for example, if he needs any art tools, then he can also just write them himself. So everybody sort of knows how to code, which is a big advantage. So yeah, we had me, then we had Friedemann, who was pretty much focused entirely on art, and then Paul, who was also focused on gameplay coding and UI design. They all did an excellent job. The game wouldn't be nearly as awesome without them. Yeah.
So how did you like why am I asking this question is because a lot of people, especially even people who work alone, they don't have a plan. They don't know how to lay out a plan when they want to code a game. So like when they progress a little bit, when they have a few scripts of a few hundred lines of code, they tend to break things, you know. Something in this script is not working, it's not communicating with the other script. They need to go through 10, 20, 30, 50 lines of code to figure out what is wrong. How can they prevent that, especially if you're working in a team? Like, this is, you know, one of the most interesting things people want to know.
Oh, okay, interesting. So the way we did it is as I've said, first of all, we created these prototypes that gave us a pretty detailed idea of what we want to create. And another big advantage of these prototypes is also that you already get to try out a little bit of code architecture. So once we started going into the real project, we scrapped the prototypes entirely and basically took what we learned from coding that and said, okay, how can we set up a clean architecture for this project? So I feel like that is something you have to think about, but I also feel like it's something that comes with experience a lot. So if you haven't made any games before, it's hard to tell how exactly you should set things up. But once you make your second or your third or your fourth games, then you can basically always learn from the mistakes you made the last times and just do a better job setting it up more cleanly this time around, because then you also know the pain that comes from not doing that properly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like
yeah, so you just have to communicate with your team. I actually had quite a couple of discussions with Paul, the other main programmer on the team, on how we want to set the basic architecture up. And then of course over the course of the project it always gets messy. Like there's almost no way around that, but you can do a little better every time, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Learning by your mistakes, which is the most important thing. Like the more you create, the more you try to create and create, the better and the more understanding you have, which is a really nice point there. Now, I see that you also on Grizzly Games, there is another game. Did you also work on that, or did you guys just work on Outlanders?
No, that was a different team. So Paul and Friedemann worked on Superflight as well, together with Shahrir. Shah. Oh. I can. Can we edit it out? Because I completely messed up that name. I have
no problem, man. It's a casual. People have an understanding. Like so, but you guys now, are you like a team? Do you continue to work together? Do you have another game planned after you, of course, release Will You Snail? Because I've been following your development of Will You Snail, and I'll, by the way, put the link to that for guys who want to wishlist it if it's not released already. So, like, do you plan to continue to work together, or did you went solo after that?
I don't know. I think we'll make another game together starting in spring. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this one is a really cool one, and since you said you went all indie, so I was like, are you still in a team? Given the fact that you are working on Will You Snail by yourself now, which is the next game that I want to talk about. It's a pretty interesting concept that you had there, an interesting idea, like fighting against the AI who predicts your moves. How did you come up with that idea?
Good question. I actually don't remember. It started out as a simple rage game platformer, I guess. I just wanted to make a little troll game, more or less, a little rage game. And then I liked the idea so much that I decided to turn it into a bigger game. But I actually don't know how I came up with the initial idea. I probably just thought, how can I make a rage game that is as annoying as possible? And then I was like, what if the spikes come, or what if there's an AI that predicts where you're about to go and spawns spikes in exactly those positions?
That's
I like that premise.
yeah, it's a really cool concept. Like, and I like the idea, like how to create a game that's gonna annoy the hell out of people. Like, it's going to make them rage quit, all caps quit.
Yeah. By the way, the game right now still has a little bit of that rage game identity, but not as much as when I started the development. So it's still a little frustrating. And there's an AI that actually has quite a ton of voice acting that taunts you for your mistakes. So it's supposed to feel like an intellectual battle with that AI and a little bit of a back and forth. But it's not as much as it's not as rage gamey as it was when I started the project. Yeah.
I saw your voice acting. It's a really cool idea, and how you edit all of those things and that you show that on your channel is pretty cool, because these are some of the technical stuff, small things that add a lot to your game, especially the funny ones that you put in the game. So it's really cool. And for how long you've been working on this game? Over a year now?
Yes, I think it's a little hard to tell because it was very on and off development.
Yeah, so
I've started the project even before Islanders, so about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah, but we put that in development.
Probably 1.5 years ago. But then I made Islanders in the meantime as well, so the project was paused, and then
so
there
yeah,
were
if we
time
put
windows where didn't work on it as much, so it's very hard to tell.
Yeah, exactly. I get your point. Like, if we put the development time that you spend on it, it will be probably less than a year. And like, how did you program the AI? Was it something like, did you use some special libraries, APIs, or it's all your logic? Because how would you go of thinking like at the top of my head, like now I have no idea. I would like program an enemy to predict where I'm going to go in order to try to kill me at that position.
Yeah, it's actually not as sophisticated as it sounds. Basically, what I do is I just pretend or I just calculate where the player will end up in like 1.5 seconds if you don't give any more inputs. If you just keep moving to the right and do nothing else, where will you end up in 1.5 seconds? And that is where I can spawn my traps. That is where I started out, and that was already super annoying. And then I made it a little more sophisticated, but not much, where I say, okay, let's pretend, for example, the player is jumping halfway through. I just added those modifications in randomly, where I say, okay, if you move straight forward, here's a spike. If you jump, then perhaps I'll add a spike here at the ceiling or something like that. Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting concept, and like I also saw that you have boss fights inside of your game.
Mm-hmm.
Is it only a final boss fight, or did you add multiple bosses?
There are multiple ones, multiple mini bosses, but they're not really good. Like maybe I can find some time to rework them, but at the moment.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, you just had to push things out. I mean, it's not like it's awful. It's good to be played, but yeah, probably as you said. And this is a lesson to everybody who are watching, because there are a lot of people, I personally met a lot of people, especially online, who like work on their game for 6 months, 9 months, and then just abandon the game. For some reason they didn't like this or that. And as you said, you maybe don't like the boss fights now, but of course there is time for later to add them. So just as a message to everybody who's watching, publish the game, don't stall it. If you get in the habit of publishing the game, then you will never publish any games. Yeah,
it's a tough thing to decide when to publish your game. I feel like a good way to go about it is just to keep your game in a state where in theory you could publish it at any time, and then you can still flesh it out a bit more, and then of course eventually you'll have to publish it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes maybe I'm just saying that because I'm currently in that situation where I feel like maybe if I add a couple more things, that will push it over the edge where it becomes a really good game.
Yeah, of course. Did you guys, when it comes to Islanders, like, did you guys updated it? Did you like add new features over the time? How before, like, when did you publish the game? The Islanders one.
4th of April is when we published the game, and then
it's not even like 5-6 months.
Mm-hmm. And
really
then
cool.
we actively supported it for like another 2 months after launch, and then we slowly let it fade out so we can focus on other things. Of course,
Like
we're still doing a little bit of tech support here and there for major issues.
Like one thing I just remembered I forgot to ask, like since the Islanders was such a major hit, how did you promote the game? Like was YouTube one part of your strategy? And we'll come to YouTube later as well. Did you guys, use the Facebook, whatever, and also on Steam, because I never published on Steam. Does Steam give you any stats like where did your sales came from? Like for example, if somebody clicked the link on your YouTube channel on one of your videos and went and bought the game, can you track that sale from Steam stats?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can break that down. As I said earlier, we focused very early on creating a lot of appeal, which is eventually, I think, what made marketing or what made our marketing so successful, because we actually didn't do anything super fancy in terms of marketing. The first thing we did was more or less we published our announcement trailer on Twitter, and that tweet just completely blew up because it was just a very appealing trailer and people liked what they saw, so they shared it, and we got about 10,000 wish lists from that one tweet, which gave us a massive boost. We landed on the front page of Steam, and then from there, Steam is basically what did the marketing for us, because once you're on the front page of Steam, it works very similarly to YouTube, where when people click on your game and interact with it, like wishlisting or purchasing the game, then of course it will stay on the front page for longer and it will be shown to more people. And we also just made sure that our little thumbnail on Steam is very, very appealing and clickable.
Actually, that's one of the really, Twitter is I don't use Twitter, but I have a few friends who do. And one of my friends who's like, he had some stuff blow up on Twitter, as you said, went viral. He's like, it's very easy he was like, man, it's very easy to go viral on Twitter when it comes to your post, but it's very hard to get followers. He was like, but my point is he has 100, 200 like followers, and he put something out there and it blew up to like 10K views just like in a day, which is a lot. Like even today, if you have, for example, 200 people on YouTube, it's very hard for you to get like 10K views on your video. So you see the impact that Twitter has. So as you said, getting 10,000 wish lists just from that, it's I don't know, guys, if you guys planned it, but this is definitely an idea for some people out there. Utilize utilize whatever channel you can, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, because I had people here who are guests like who blew up their game via Facebook, others via Twitter. One of the my previous guest, he created a game like Tippy Tap was the name of the game, and it's like piano tiles on App Store, and he blew it up via Twitter, and it was trending, as you just said. When people interact with it starts to trend, and then you get more and more downloads and more sales, which is really cool. So like today, like, are the sales consistent? Like, do you get, for example, 20, 30 sales per day, or does that number vary? And do you guys plan to like promote it more, or you're just gonna move forward on the next project?
I didn't really check how many sales it gets at the moment. For what you've said about Twitter, I would add that I think you're right. You can't really plan for those things to go viral, unfortunately. But what you can plan for is making a good-looking game that appeals to people who see it, with an appealing fantasy. For example, building a city on little islands where people go like, I want to build a city on beautiful little islands. So you can make sure that you pick a topic and a look that resonates with people, and that will make marketing significantly easier, and that will that will just increase your potential to go viral on any platform.
Nice idea.
But there's no guarantee. But
of
having
course,
an appealing game will help you either way. That is the point I was trying to make. Yeah.
Nice point. But what I say that is a guarantee is what you did, like building an audience, having a YouTube channel. Like, was there a reason? Like, did you just went on YouTube because you like the idea to post videos, or did you plan that strategically to build an audience around yourself? Because nowadays, if you don't have an audience, it's very hard to do anything, if you're not doing paid advertising. Like, I can imagine that your game now, Will You Snail, has a lot of already wish lists just because you're posting it on YouTube and showcasing it, and especially showcasing your development. So was that something that you strategically planned, or just went with the flow?
That was definitely one of my main intentions, was definitely building an audience for the YouTube channel. Luckily on YouTube it is, or you can only grow on YouTube if you provide some value in return. So even though I'm doing this more or less for myself with selfish reasons, I know that I can only grow the channel if I help out other people along the way, which I think is actually a very, very nice thing. So you have to make sure that it's a win-win for you as well as for your audience. Otherwise, nobody's gonna watch your content. Yeah, but it was definitely a strategic decision to grow an audience. However, for Islanders, I'm not sure if having a YouTube channel helped that much. I was sitting at around 1,000 subscribers when we launched Islanders.
I remember that.
And publishing Islanders also blew up my channel quite a bit. I have to say that, yeah. And then, of course, I mean, YouTube is one of those things that probably doesn't pay off in the first 2 or 3 years. But once you've consistently been doing it for a longer period of time, it becomes more and more valuable as more and more people watch your videos.
Yeah,
so I think it's just a very good long-term investment to start a YouTube channel.
Yeah, this is what I'm like today. I'm telling people, and for some reason, some people debate that, of course, but of course not all people think the same. But especially if you're a game developer, especially if you're an indie game developer, having a YouTube channel is a must for you, because what we do is so visual. It's so visual. It's so appealing. Like, as you said, especially if you create something that looks beautiful on the eye, people want to click that. People want to see that. And then when you, as you said, provide value, which is of course the number one thing that you need to do on YouTube, and people love to see those devlog videos because they are so educational. You learn a lot of things, and especially it's also entertaining at the same time, because I'm looking at you, how you develop your game. You're talking about your struggles, you're talking about how you overcome them. I'm watching you directly create the game, and I feel also like a part of that game. And even though I'm not contributing, but I'm watching you and I feel like I'm there. And I can imagine just like other people what they're doing. And especially, as you said, also one major thing when it comes with that is you will get feedback. You get a lot of feedback. Maybe you get an idea that you didn't thought of. And again, coming back to the audience thing, you get a lot of wish lists for your game on Steam as well.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
So yeah, exactly.
But to be fair, not everybody is maybe perfectly suited for making a YouTube channel. There are also other platforms you can grow. Like, everybody has different talents. Maybe if you're not that good in front of a camera, then perhaps you can find a different platform. Like, you can grow an audience on Twitter as well. It just takes a little bit of a different skill set. So it depends on your skill set, which platform is the best for you. But in general, I 100% agree. Building an audience as an indie game developer probably makes sense long term.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, long term. Like, I started my channel 2014, which is, like, when I think about it now, ages ago, So yeah, like, what is your plan like moving forward? So the next thing for you is to publish Will You Snail. After that, what do you plan on doing?
After that, there will be the next Grizzly Games project with Paul and Freeman.
Do you already have something in mind, or you're going to brainstorm it after that?
No, we don't have anything in mind. We'll probably do another 2 weeks of prototyping, where we'll create another 10 to 20 prototypes, and then we'll go from there.
Did you like another thing that just came to my mind while we were talking about the audience building? And is that even possible to do on Steam and computer games? Because a lot of publishers do that with mobile games. Like, if you played any catch-up game, you will see, like, inside the game they're promoting another game they have. Did something like that came across your mind? What do you think about that? Like, for example, or having your website featured inside of the game where people can click on, potentially capturing their email? Because also, I don't know if you do email marketing or have a website, but email is definitely another way. It's basically people are wish listing directly on your list, and you can send them emails whenever you want to send them, not only when Steam has a sale and Steam decides to send the emails. So that's also one approach. What do you think about that?
At the moment, we have a very minimalist approach because we're a very small team. We're just 3 people, so we have to be very careful with what we spend our time on. So we only want to spend things or time on things where we know it will be worth our time. And managing, building an email list is probably one of those things that has a little bit of or the upkeep for a 3-man team is just a bit too high probably to be worth it. Similar for a website, we don't even have a website at the moment. So
I was surprised. I was searching, so I wanted to ask you that. I was searching, and when it comes to email lists, it's not that much. I have, for example, on my email list, I have around 24,000 people, and it's not that hard to manage. Like you build an automatic system. So I'm throwing this out there, like if you can use it as an idea later. Like you build an automatic system. I use ActiveCampaign. Everything is done automatically. Like when somebody signs up, automatically a welcome email is being sent. And only when I want to send something, like, and most of the time I send like useful things. I don't like do like the companies do, like overwhelm you with promotions. And every single time they see an email from me, it's not a promotion. Like I send around 15 emails per month. Out of those 15 emails, 3-4 are promotions in strategically placed time lapses, so to say, so that I don't come out as a salesy person, just buy. I also provide value there as well. And basically it takes me like 5-10 minutes to write that email. Like if you publish a YouTube video, you can talk about briefly what value you have in the video. If you want to see the rest, check out the video. So maybe that's also an idea, because I follow a lot of these people like Gary Vee and stuff like that, and what they advise is like you building your email list is your like secure. Like tomorrow, if God forbid you or I or anybody loses his YouTube channel, it will like cut down the business by a lot. I mean, especially in my case, which also brings me, what do you think about, I was very worried, and I don't know what you think about this new regulation when it comes to kids, and they are not specific what is that is appealing to kids. Like, for example, I create game development tutorials. You also post about your game, and inside of those guidelines it said, if you have characters or animations or something like that in your video that might be appealing to kids. What do I know? I don't know what's appealing to a kid. Maybe I don't know, maybe I put somebody shooting a pig and maybe some kid will find that appealing. I don't know what's appealing to a kid. So like, and again, coming to this, having your email list, because you own it. I would not like to see like any especially game development channel being taken down because of that stupid reason.
Yeah, common sense tells me that probably game development channels will not be affected by this all that much, or if they are, then I think things will go really crazy. I mean, that would be just stupid, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, you don't know what's appealing to a kid. Maybe he will see your game and find that appealing. I don't know. I cannot control the kid, So yeah, but yeah, overall, it's very nice as an indie to have that YouTube channel. So for everybody watching this, if you plan to go on indie, definitely create a YouTube channel. And basically that will be it. I asked you everything I had, like when it comes, because I mean, if you have something to add to something useful, some advice or whatever, go ahead.
What I would add is just when making games, try to follow the best practices because they're best practices for a reason. It's the main mistake I myself make in game projects is that I just think I'm suddenly so smart that I don't have to do all of the basic stuff like prototyping at the beginning of the project, having a look at my target audience, etc., etc. So it makes sense to do those things. And unfortunately, I oftentimes skip out on them because I just think I'm I'm smarter for whatever reason. I've figured it out. I've cracked the code.
Definitely, and especially game developers just want to get their hands in right away and create the stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for stopping by. It was very nice having you here, especially, you know, first time I have a YouTuber game developer on the podcast, which is really nice, and especially with your success that you had to inspire all the people watching, because you're, you know, the idea behind this podcast was that I would bring people like you, like normal people, not like, I hate it when I see indie game developers or some, like, in quotes, indie, he's a guest in a podcast. But when you look at that indie, he's a guy who's a veteran in the industry, worked 20 years in the industry, worked for AA companies. Now he's an indie with a team of 20 people. That's not an indie, man. That's a professional studio, like, you know. But if you're alone, which the majority of people are, you know, not everybody has, you know, a budget, or not everybody knows people around him that can help him with game development. So it's nice to see, like, you creating your Will Snail game alone and promoting it and stuff like that. So people definitely learn a lot. So yeah, thank you for stopping, and it was a pleasure talking to you. I will link all the games that you have, Islanders, Will Snail, below. Also YouTube channel from Jonas. If you don't already subscribe, if you're not subscribed to him, go and subscribe and watch his video, because they're very useful. I watch them. And yeah, thank you again. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And I will see you again.